Evening, everyone. Peace and love in the house. It's so good to be here and use this platform to conduct a writing workshop. This is my first time doing this, so be easy on me. I've been in sort of a reclusive state. I just had a baby about 7 months ago. So it actually feels really good to shake up my routine and be here and do this work. So thank you so much for showing up and investing in yourself in this way, investing in your time to create something beautiful, something meaningful. And I'm so happy to help you with that. So that said, I'm gonna give you a little context for who I am and how I reached here. Why am I sitting in this chair? How did I even get to a point where I'm in a position for you to listen to what I have to say? So I'm so curious about when I meet writers, I'm always wondering what was that first impetus? What made you first put pen to paper? I find that an interesting moment in everyone's life who considers themselves writers, because when you actually engage in that act, something happens and you want to do it again. And you want to do it again. And so there's that like magical moment where you discover something. So for me, I had this image in my head of myself as an old woman in a rocking chair, reading my life. This is why I started journaling. I started journaling when I was around 12 years old. And I don't know, I just had this image and I went with it. I started writing in a journal every day at that age. And then at some point I transitioned into poetry when I was asked to write a poem about Christmas for an English class assignment. That's why it's such a gift to be able to teach poetry, because when I was asked to write that poem about Christmas, that's really what changed my life. That's when I discovered that I loved this thing. I loved thinking about Christmas and writing down the images and writing down the smells, because it's such an evocative time, right? So from then poetry and I were hooked. And so to be able to go into classrooms or Zoom rooms and to give people prompts, it's like a full circle moment for me every time, because the classroom is where poetry and I began. So that was around 13 when I started writing poetry pretty seriously. I joined the school literary magazine in high school. I became the editor of the school literary magazine. So I was like that lit geek walking around with the school literary magazine, trying to push it, trying to get it. We used to sell them for $1. And we spent so long editing this thing. And I just felt so much pride in selling these magazines. And so I consider myself very lucky, because at a relatively early age, I knew what I wanted to do. And I think for many of the young women here, the fact that you're here suggests the same thing, that you are, you found a passion, and you're putting yourself in the way of improving that gift, improving that skill, that capability to translate the untranslatable onto paper. So we're sort of in the same path, in the sense that nowadays you have more opportunities at your fingertips than I might have had, but I was really glad that I had a teacher in high school named Mr. Zucker, who headed the literary magazine and encouraged me to take it all the way. So soon after, when I went to university, which was at Florida State University, I decided to major in English with an emphasis in creative writing, with a minor in Black studies. And during that time, when I was studying English theory and the craft of poetry and all these juicy classes that I would love to sit in on any time now, here in my 40s, I joined this poetry troupe called Back Talk Poetry Troupe. Now, Back Talk Poetry Troupe was the performance, these are like the spoken word performers in town. They were hitting up nightclubs, they were hitting up big stages in different universities, and they were performing poetry. And this was something that was terrifying to me. I loved writing my work, publishing it in my school literary magazine, and never having to interact with my readership. That's where I was at that point because of my own shyness. I'm still actually quite shy. But when I saw those poets performing, there was something about the ways in which the words took on a life of their own, and to see the words actually interact with the audience, that felt very meaningful to me. And I wanted to understand that connection suddenly between the writer and the audience. So I started writing poems that I thought would be pleasing to the ear. And I started to hit up open mics with these poems. And because my writing was already pretty developed, it was just a matter of developing my performance. Of course, writing can always develop, but I was comfortable with my writing. I was not a spring chicken in my writing. It was just the performance aspect. I was so nervous. I just remember my voice box was shaking, my foot was twitching, and the audience didn't see any of that. But I felt this overwhelming nervousness that I was able to conquer time and time again. And soon enough, I was asked to join the poetry troupe. And what this meant was going all over the place to different universities, to different towns as a group and performing our work. Starting to get paid to perform my work, which was like, wow, I was just doing it out of passion. But I just remember that first sweaty $50 that I got for doing a feature somewhere. And it was just like a snowball effect from there. You know, and I always had friends along the way encouraging me to do things that I wouldn't have done on my own. So one friend said, oh, you need to put out a CD. I was like, how do I do that? And then suddenly I started meeting all these musicians who had these studios, and I started recording in people's studios. It was just, sometimes the writing itself, cultivating writing is hard work. And sometimes though, when you start seeing things really fall together for you, that means that's like a big yes from the ethers, from the universe, that you're on the right path. That's my sincere belief. When things start to fall together, it doesn't mean struggle isn't necessary, but I felt like I was being carried along by something. And I just had to keep my eyes and my heart open to what was happening and to the people that I was meeting. And you know, within about 2 years of being in Back Talk, I had a website, I had a CD out, I was starting to perform all across the Southeast United States. And so after I left Florida State University, I went straight to get my poetry MFA, my Master's in Fine Arts and Poetry. I went to the University of Virginia, and it was a more rigorous program. But I also had time to continue performing. I would drive to other cities in Virginia and start slamming. That's when I started my very short slam career, and that was in Virginia. And that honed my performance skills. Meanwhile, in the classroom, I was honing my craft of writing. So I really had the best of both worlds, in that I was giving myself this education by going out there and putting myself in all of these gnarly situations to be heard, to work with a team, to find community in this craft, which was very important for me at that time. And then on the other hand, I was in the classroom, duking it out with my colleagues about all matters of poetry. Lots of theory, lots of discussions that the everyday person would not care about. I loved it all. I loved the interaction with the everyday person that walked into a bar and was moved by the poetry. And I loved talking theory. So I realized that there was just everything about this path I was excited about. And it was a great time in my life of blooming, where I went from being a very shy immigrant girl, and I say immigrant because I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and I was shy for so many years, and this call to allow my work to do more of its work, you know, that call, it forced me out of my shell. And so while I may I may have some extroverted qualities as a result of performing my work in all of these situations. I'm still very shy at my core, but it doesn't paralyze me anymore like it used to when I was younger. So after I finished my MFA, I moved straight to New York City. Right out of my MFA program, I got a job teaching poetry to acting students at Juilliard. I was about 24 years old. I taught maybe a couple of classes before at the University of Virginia. And it was just such a big leap for me in so many ways to move to a new city. I didn't have a lot of work lined up. That was like the only opportunity that drew me to New York City. I had to find other things. And in time, I was able to really cobble it together. I had a rich community there already. And it was just about going out there, hitting the open mics, starting to get to know people, getting my work heard, publishing my work, going to different writing retreats, applying to things. And I was able to cobble together a really lovely, I would say a really lovely life for myself as a writer in New York. It wasn't easy, but it was fulfilling. I believed in what I was doing. I started working with the actors. Some of the most, I have students that you can now see on all these different shows on Netflix. You can see them on billboards. I have students, I worked at Juilliard for 10 years. It was one of the most memorable teaching experiences of my life, alongside teaching students in the Bronx, as well as senior citizens, sometimes inmates at Rikers Island. I had a beautiful spectrum of students, and this was important to me as well. And this ties into my writing in that I believe that there should, in terms of poetry, there's something for everyone. And that's what's so beautiful about it. Some poetry is extremely heightened and metaphorical, and some poetry is very hard-hitting, very literal. I think I just respect the multiplicity of voices that poetry carries with it, and that's what the art form needs. And so I consider my work to have a diverse set of subject matters and styles, and similarly, I love being able to teach people from different walks of life. And there's an expression that my friend used to say, which is, to teach is to learn twice. I still question the validity of whether I can teach someone poetry. As long as I've been doing this for about 15 years. But can I actually teach you how to write? I want you to think about that. Can someone teach you how to write? I'm not so sure, because I can give you a flashlight and I can lead you, I can show you the dark cave, but I'm handing you the flashlight, because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to face that blank page. I can give you some prompts, I can give you some push-off words, I can give you some parameters, but in the end, you are putting those words down. And that's a very personal thing. So again, I thank you for coming here and allowing yourself to be vulnerable by allowing yourself this moment. So really the teaching really happens when you begin to do the writing. I can teach aspects of craft, but I don't think I can teach you to write. That is your moment. So we're going to get into that very soon. Just to say that I have my teacher, Rita Dove, at the University of Virginia. Raise your virtual hand if you've heard of the lovely Rita Dove. She's such a wonderful professor. When I used to go to her office hours and sit down with her and try to pick her infinite brain, she has these, the kind of advice that I remember from her is very simple. And she had a 2-word advice that I always took with me, and that was, there's 2 things. One piece of advice I remember her saying was, write everything. And her career has been a testament to that. She's written poetry, she's written plays, she's written a novel, she's written, her work has been, her essays, everything you could think of. And that deeply informed me. And so when I look at my body of work, which I have a few of my pieces here, you will see, you know, poetry CD. This is my last little ditty, Oh Delicious Poems. This is my first children's book, which is really just a chapter book based on Everybody Hates Chris. This was like back in 2007. And I have a poetry book here that I co-authored with Martin Espada, his poems and mine. And this is my latest children's book, right? Card from my father. We'll talk about that a little later on. So I took her advice by writing, I haven't written a play as yet, you know, but I believe in that. I believe in stretching the art form, stretching my voice. And what I also admire about Rita is that no two of her books are the same. Every time she finishes a book of poetry, she finds a way to challenge herself. What am I going to do this time that I did not do the last time? So write everything is something that I would extend to all of you. And the other thing that she advised me to do was to keep everything. When I say everything, when she says keep everything, she means every draft, every scribble, all of your archives, because she told me that if you accrue all of your papers across your career and you end up having a wonderful career, those papers will be very valuable to people later on. And so she really encouraged me to hold on to my drafts and hold on to my correspondence. And I've done that as well. I have tubs and tubs of all of my archives in the garage. And it's funny that she told me that, because I already had a problem throwing away archives. And when I think about that first image of myself in my rocking chair, looking back on my life, that's essentially the archive. It's that I gave myself this gift. As a young person, I gave my older self this gift of all of these years and decades of thoughts and poetry and whatever else I decided to keep. And I went over my archives a few weeks ago, and I have a lot of archives. I really did manage to hold on to a lot of stuff. So I would extend that to you as well, is that you know, these archives, you never know what they'll mean to you later on. So that draft that you scribbled on and you just threw away, think twice about doing that. Have a folder to keep your stuff in. That's just some humble advice: to write everything, keep everything. Capiche? I can feel the collective head nod. So I'm going to share 3 poems, right? And this is not, there's a lot of false advertising going on these days. This workshop is not a false advertisement. The name of the workshop is I Remember, I Believe, I Am. And that's because those are the 3 prompts that I am going to give you today. Very simple and not simple, right? So when I teach poetry classes, I try to give very simple prompts, because I understand that my students, even if it's just, whether it's one-off students or whether it's students that I have for an entire semester, again, it's that idea that I'm not always going to be with you. You're not always going to be in a class setting, but there's going to be times when things bubble up and you're going to want to write something, and where do I start? And that's the thing that I get the most from writers, young writers, like, where do I start? And there's just some words that you could start with, that it's a tool that will always drop you into a place. And so these 3 prompts, that's how they're supposed to function. As when you're alone in that space and some memory is bubbling up, just start with I Remember and see where it takes you, right? So with that said, I'm going to share 3 odes with you today. Now, if some of you remember my visit at Girls Right Now, maybe, was that like 2 years ago? I shared some odes, and I think I was told that the odes did continue as a tradition there. But these poems are very important to me. An ode is essentially a poem in dedication to a subject. And often it's exalting something. However, I have written a few diss odes. I think to put your focus on anything in a sense is to praise it. So there's ways in which you can challenge the ode by allowing some shadow elements to come through, and not all odes are going to be all bouncy and exaltatory. Is that a word? Exalting. So it's so I have 3 odes that I'm going to share with you. Okay, and these are in the spirit of the writing that we're doing today. So this is my first ode. The first ode I'm going to share. I haven't read this in a very long time. It's like an old friend to see this poem again. And it's called Ode to Chalk. I remember that summer school I started in my room with your help. 10 years old, poised before the rickety blackboard, brandishing you like a parliament. I mourn your eclipse across the road's rock, paper skin. That afternoon in detention, saddled down with bucket and sponge to wash every board whistle clean, I learned this much. You know everything. You name names. You are a sword, difficult to master. You come in rainbows and cry like the rest of us. Limestone lady, you are impossible to erase. Your tap across the black, Morse code, my grandmother's ghost. And how you break so gladly into multitudes. Each day I leave my classroom Cheek Street. Your arid spit smudging the sides of my palms, my mountaintops kissed with your first snows. Shark tooth, you have been a torch, baton, hope in the hand of the enslaved. Your swept remains are the true contents of the hourglass. Woo! It's been a long time. All right, so the second poem, this is one of my newest, these next 2 poems are my newest pieces, all right? So there's that. This one is Ode to Darkness. I am that candle in your cavity, burning at both ends. My destinies to defy gravity soften in my ascent. You swallowed me like a pill, but I am more feast than supplement. Cosmic culprit, you inject your venom with a whisper, you shapeshift, slither. Without your face, suns wouldn't know their places. We'd be strangers to their shine. You reveal them ever faithfully, right on rhyme. Every sunset blows the whistle on how diligently you descend, no matter how bright the day had been. It was easy to take for granted being golden before you swirled in. I stopped walking the sunny sides of streets. My smiles grew slimmer. Fog hung its gray coats between my thoughts, drained cup of shimmer. No matter how clear the sky that day, you hovered like an umbrella, yet somehow in my way, blocking my path, stopping my joy, truncating my laugh. That was before I knew to protect my auric house against your termites, before I knew we were at war. Now, I throw up prayers and double helix my locks into Bantu knots and tighten the laces on my winged Timbs, preparing to elevate. This is how one learns that the stars are bullet holes. Unsung prophets shot the heavens to let us know that the infinite's glow behind your twisted curtain is all that's real, fellow creation. My soul intends to survive these chapters and verses by tweezing blessings from your backhands and meditating to attune my being to the cosmic compass most high within us, O darkness. I am that candle burning at both ends. My twin fires dance livid on this test climb through your bowels. Within my ascension, I rise through your illusions and limiting lies, up this epic spiral for the blinding shores and skies of paradise. How many of you can hear a baby crying in the background? I just want to know what you're hearing because I'm hearing him. Did anyone hear a baby? Oh, you don't mind? That means yes! All right, I'm gonna get him. Everyone say hi to Suleiman. Hi, Suleiman. This is Suleiman. This is my...
Aww.
Hi. So, multitasking, that's the motherhood thing. All right. I see some like really kind words happening. It's like so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh. Okay, this is my newest piece, last one. And this is called Ode to Becoming. I am a boat rocker, pot spoon in the hand of my creator. I am a gleaming can of worms. I am China shop bull cantering into a storm, asker and sayer, dealer of things. I am discomfort's daughter, misinterpretations, identical twin. I am two truths holding hands, a queen baby. Whole and cracked I am, boundless with limitations, sorry without regret. I am more than the sum of my achievements and errors, spacious inside. I am not who I was yesterday. I am growing under and away from your sight. Tell me how you would consider me then, beloved. Dandelion or weed? Or am I a seed bursting into tree? No matter. I am worthy of everything that I desire. A family of my making, friendship, forgiveness. I am worthy of your vexation, your ears and heart tendons to stretch, your heavy lifting. I am a figment of God's imagination. I am more than I say. I am who I am becoming. All right, so that's the end of my reading. I'm happy to, do I have time to take any questions now, Rochelle? I don't know how are we doing on time?
I think we can do one or two.
One or two questions, okay. Okay, does anyone have any questions for me? Or are you all spellbound?
Molly asks, how do you write with a baby?
How do I write with a baby? Well, there's like the psychic question and then there's the mechanics question. The mechanics question is making sure that he doesn't grab hold of my pen when the lightning strikes. Because for me, I really work off of inspiration. So when that lightning strikes and it's undeniable that a poem is like trying to push up out of me, sometimes it's like no matter what I'm doing, I have to at least jot it down. So I have notebooks everywhere, like all over my room. So if I'm nursing him over here, I have a notebook right over there. I have a notebook here. I have a notebook, you know, so I make sure that I have like a notebook of some sort easily accessible to me. So that's like part of it, is just like having my materials ready. And I have a baby and I have a 4-year-old. Writing it is difficult to find the time, but truly when a poem wants to be born, it insists. It insists. What that means is if I have to stay up till 3 in the morning after I finish nursing, or if that poem drags me up out of my sleep at like 3:30 in the morning, the same 3 o'clock that I could stay up till, I could also wake up at that time. And I find these little moments in between. Now I understand the poet Lucille Clifton so much better, because Lucille Clifton was asked, why are your poems so short? Her poems are so brief and they're very dense in what they're actually saying. So some they might come off as simplistic if they're not really reading the layers. Someone once asked her why are your poems so short? And she had a gang of children. You know, she had a gang of children, and it was a very practical reason. She couldn't go on and on, and so her poems had that brevity as a result. And so it's the same thing. I have to snatch my time, you know, to write these things. So that's it's really about the poem's insistence, because if the poem doesn't insist, it will not be written. And when I say the poem insists, it's because I believe that I believe that poems have a spirit of their own. I believe that they're alive. And I believe that just like our children want to be born, poems want to be born. And if an idea doesn't filter through me, it's just gonna go to someone else, and someone else will write it in their way. but the poem itself is a spirit that wants to come into this material reality. And it's just a matter of, am I open to it? Am I listening? And do I make the time and the psychic space to create that thing? And so when a poem is like just burning, like there's just nothing that can stop it, you know? Yeah, great question.
I think that's an excellent segue into our writing portion.
All right, sounds good. All right, so this is my favorite part. I love watching people write. Now, I might not be able to see you write like as if you're in a classroom, but there's just nothing like a room full of people writing. I think it's just the most beautiful feeling and sight. It's such a sacred act. So let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. First prompt is I remember. Now, you can tackle this a few ways, okay? What I ask is that you use I remember as a push-off word, okay? Now, I want you to think about two ways to go about this. You can use I remember as a litany, which means a repeating word or phrase, right? So you can just, especially when you're stuck, I love litanies. When I'm stuck, I'll just like use the same word over and over, and it becomes like a motor, you know? And you find some kind of rhythm in that. So if you want to use a litany and you can just keep saying, I remember, and it could be off the wall, you could be bouncing all over the place. It doesn't have to be linear. Don't worry about that, you know? Just let it flow, let it just rock. There's that. Or you might just use I remember once, and you might just go from there. I want you to think about also, if you do decide to go that route, right? Where you say, I remember, think about, in my poem, Ode to Chalk, I was actually speaking to the chalk. When you say, I remember, who are you addressing? It could be just, it could be just an audience, but it could be a specific person or object. So that's another hinge to this. Think about who you would like to address. When you say, I remember, how specific would you like your addressee to be? And again, it could be a person, place, or thing, right? Or it could be just the general audience. But that's just something I want you to think about. Okay, so if there's no pressing questions, let's begin. 10 minutes, right? Enjoy my trancy music. I like to write to healing tones. So that's what I'm offering. That's what I'm offering to you today. So, okay. All right, so let's do this 10 minutes. I remember. back. Good timing. So as Rochelle mentioned in the beginning, we're going to share our work at the end. However, I would love to hear from anyone, just how was that for you? How did it go? Deanie Matthews says, great. Did any surprises happen? The music, right? The music helped, yeah. The music just does something for me. Okay, it's okay to be lost for the first few minutes. Yep. Let me see. Oh, I was lost for first few minutes and I got inspiration out of nowhere. It came out really easily for me. I had no idea I had so much to say about cement. Tried not to get too deep. Well, good luck with that. The music. You went way back. Memories coming back. You're not even done, Erica. It never ends. Emotional. Went deeper than I thought. 2 words I remember. How deep is it that, and this is what I love about writing prompts in general, is that you all get the same first 2 words, and look how differently it happens for everyone. Childhood. I'm so happy to hear that you're inspired. I'm getting goosebumps just reading your responses to this. I can only imagine what went down on that page. A sort of epiphany. Give me some of that, girl. Give me some of that. I want to share what I wrote with the person I wrote about. I do that with my dreams. When I dream about someone, I try my best to let them know. And poems, same should go for poems. Nice spin. Someone started the prompt, Priscilla, with, I don't remember. Slick. I love that rebellion. Love it. Best poems come from my dreams. Oh, the dreams are just endless in terms of the poetic possibilities, right? Okay, let us launch into the second prompt. You ready? Are you all warmed up? Are your hands all warmed up? Yes. Okay. I believe. I think that belief is about the most intimate and powerful thing that a person can share. What they actually believe. Because it's one thing to say, I know. There's a certain certainty that comes with knowing. Belief is that nether region between knowing and not knowing. But there's an alchemy of belief where it's like what it is to believe something that you can't prove necessarily, or to believe something that you know others will have opposition to it. It's not an easy thing to share all the time. And when I see people walking around, that's kind of what I wonder, like, what does this person believe? What does that person believe? I just find it so intimate. So I would like us to delve into this now. And this is really just, I don't have any pointers. I mean, you could go into the spiritual territory if you want, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that. I'm going to read the lyrics to the beginning lyrics to a song, and I want to see who can guess. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Oh, Whitney! Yes, Whitney. I mean, come on. Isn't that the most beautiful song? I believe our children are the future. So it could be, you can believe any matter of things. I think sometimes spirituality hijacks the idea of belief, but you can believe in anything. So I want to give you some space now to dig into that territory. 9 minutes, because I'm talkative.
I'm actually also jumping in to say, we'll do a short one this time around. So we'll do 5 minutes so that we can all come back and clap at 7. And then we'll go back to a long write for the last one, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, music coming.
Music coming. All right. Be ready. All right, we're back. So we had a shorter time. What did you do with it? How did it go?
I think we will take a second now, more than a second.
Oh, it's
Hopefully, like, put your cameras on. We can all clap here together. And I will unmute everybody just to express our gratitude before we move on. It seems like tonight, if I'm not mistaken, we have someone tuning in from work. Saida. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Wow.
I'm Saida.
Yeah.
Oh, that's juicy. You can every day.
Saida, what did you say her name is?
Hi. But she
You are cutting out a little bit. I'm sorry to say, but
thank you, Saida.
we're so, so grateful. And I hope you're able to sneak in a little bit of writing later.
Much.
Oh. So much heart here tonight.
Great tradition. Important.
Okay, y'all. Putting everyone back on mute, and I will hand it back over to Samantha.
Okay. That's such an awesome tradition. Very important. Thank you for that. So how did this one go? And I'm curious as to having 5 minutes to do it this time, if that did anything, to have less time. Oh, it was easier to use I believe. Eliza says, I found it easier to use I believe, like I remember. Deanie says detours, a little more difficult, looser, harder. I agree, I feel like I had more to say than what fit into the span of 5 minutes. Ruhi says, Ruhi! It was different, more concrete somehow. Difficult. Rough at the start, but I got into it. Difficult. Difficult because I believe so much. Kudos to that. So much to believe, so little time to write it down. And that's true too. Eliza says you can always go back to continue writing the piece. That's a very important point. This is a free write. It might not be a complete finished work. I don't know how much you can get done in 10 minutes, but these are just seeds that you can use and carry into your process later on. We're just kicking up dust here. So definitely see this as an opportunity, like as a diving board into more writing, right? Okay, I'm looking forward to hearing whatever you feel like sharing a little later on. So we have our last prompt, okay? This one will be 10 minutes, correct, Rochelle? 10 minutes? All right.
We'll write until 7:14.
Okay. So this one is I am. Okay. There was actually an I am challenge circulating on Instagram a while ago, and I missed that boat, but some poets really lit it up. There's so much you can do with these 2 words. It's so empowering to really claim yourself in this universe. Right? So this is what this is something that I'm gonna offer to you, because it's easy to go to start saying I am happy. I would say just to bring us to a different place at the outset. Why don't you think about what would you compare yourself to? This is such a right moment for a metaphor. So in my first poem, Ode to Darkness, my example was I am a candle in your cavity. And, I didn't know where that poem was gonna go. Like, I don't know where any of my poems are gonna go. But once I settled on that candle image for myself, it just took my poem to a whole other dimension that I just did not expect. So I want to offer that to you too. What would you liken yourself to? And again, you can use the litany. Like my last poem, Ode to Becoming, I used I am quite a bit. And then in my Ode to Darkness, I only used it twice. So you can decide how much you want to use that. But all I ask is that you push off of that and you start with an image. Try to bridge someone's imagination with that metaphor and see where it takes you. And it might take you for 2 lines and you might switch to something else, but give it a shot, okay? All right, let's begin. You have 10 minutes. You have until, what, 7:16. right now. Thank you so much for having me. I love your organization so much. I mean, if I were a young person these days and this organization were around, who knows where I'd be. You know, it's just such vital work that you're doing. I'm very honored that you asked me to do this, and thank you all for showing up so beautifully and fully, and just being so down and so game and so vulnerable and so beautiful. So thank you. It's my pure pleasure.